Olá, sejam muito bem-vindos mais uma vez ao Amor Cast. Hoje, gente, que capítulo, que episódio especial. Eu tive a honra de conhecer a majestade, a rainha do Congo, DIAMBI KABATUSUILA. E a minha assessora de imprensa, a Yara, fez essa conexão fantástica para a gente aproveitar a falar de amor. O que a representação da rainha tem feito pela sociedade, pela cultura, pelos preconceitos, para que a união e o amor prevaleça. Então, apresento a vocês, é uma honra, rainha, estar presente aqui no nosso canal.
Bom dia.
Bom dia.
Também para mim é uma honra também. E estou muito feliz de estar aqui com você para falar um pouco de quem sou.
A gente vai rodar essa entrevista em inglês, mas vai ter as legendas aqui embaixo para vocês acompanharem. E espero que vocês aproveitem, porque com certeza é algo inédito, exclusivo e que traz muita gratidão e amor no meu coração de estar alcançando pessoas além do Brasil. You're very welcome here, Queen. I would like to make you some questions, Your Majesty. And first one is, tell us about your story, how you became a queen.
Oh, this is quite a long story, but I will try to shorten it as much as I can. So it was really a surprise to me as well. See, I grew up in Kinshasa.
Okay.
Kinshasa is the capital of the DRC, Congo. That's today Democratic Republic of Congo. But when I was born, it was called just the Congo, Republic of Congo. And then it changed to Zaire. And then now it changed again to Democratic Republic of Congo. But I grew up there, and I grew up in a city, very much like São Paulo, big city with a lot of people. And that was very modern Africa, so not really connected to the traditions. And then, because my father was an ambassador, we traveled a bit with his work. Okay. I lived in Germany and then Belgium, and so I had some other experiences in different countries.
Did Your Majesty's born there?
I was born in Belgium because at the time my father was a diplomat in Belgium.
Oh, okay.
So he was working for Congo in Belgium. So this is why I was born in Belgium.
Great.
But then 6 months later, I was in Congo and I grew up there. But my mother is also from Belgium and Luxembourg. So I'm Belgo-Luxembourg and then Congo.
Okay, great.
And then later on, I lived in the United States, where I realized the struggle of the African people, the descendant, like here, the African descendants so in the United States. Mm-hmm. And they were also looking at me and asking me a lot of questions about, wow, you are from Africa. How is Africa? Tell us more. And I realized I had I lacked information really about almost what my history was.
Okay.
I knew very little about the history of Africa. Although I went to school there, I grew up there. Most of the study we did was focused on Europe and the Western world. Mm-hmm. So I started to realize that I lack information. And then also they were asking me, like, what are you? What are you? I was like, I'm me. I didn't really quite understand the question of identity in terms of race, because my mother was white, my father was black. For me, it was just, I was what I was. I didn't have to define myself as being one or the other. Okay. I was some of this one and some of the other. I was both, Mm-hmm. But in America, I started to realize that anybody that has a mix with black person is considered to be black.
Yes.
Which I find to be fine, because I grew up in Africa and I consider myself to be black as well. So I said, yeah, for me, it wasn't a problem to identify myself as an African woman, mm-hmm. because that's who I was. However, I realized I didn't have the information. So in the United States, I started to learn about African history.
Okay.
And I started to realize that it was an amazing history that I'd never learned before in any school, because the academics are not oriented towards teaching the real story about the continent of Africa. Yeah. And as I was studying the history of Africa, and I was studying the contribution of the African people to build a new world, or so-called new world by the Europeans, I started realizing that I was angry, because I felt, why don't I have this information? I come from Africa. Africa is the provider of those people. They came to Africa to take away those people. We didn't learn about that in school. Then we had colonization. We learned briefly about colonization as if it was a great thing for us, because before colonization, seemingly, we must have been savages or demonic or whatever it was that negative propaganda that they did. So they didn't teach us about our previous life before colonization, that we had massive kingdom and great civilizations for thousands of years. All of this information was hidden on purpose. So I was angry with the education system. I was in university already, and I took a bunch of mathematics classes all throughout my years. And never once they told me that we were doing mathematics in Congo 25,000 years ago. So I was really concerned about the fact that I was lied to, or I was misinformed or miseducated. And if I was miseducated as an African woman, everybody else was too, because everybody was miseducated about the Africans. So that to say that I started to do a research about my own identity to complete basically my identity, because I had one side, the European side, that was highly developed because I learned everything about the Romans, the Greeks, and the Mesopotamia and all this, but I never learned anything about Africa. And all I knew about Africa was negative. And that was a way for me to restore myself, because I was not balanced, because colonization forced people to believe that what we were was nothing. Just like they made people believe here, because you are a descendant of a slave, which is not true. You're a descendant of a person that was captive, kept imprisoned against their own will and forced to work. So in a forced labor camp. So they don't use those words. They say, oh, your ancestors were slaves. No. So the same story they told the people here, we were told that story in Africa. So the problem is, when you are mixed, you're like, wait a minute, something is wrong. So one side of me is excellent and the other side of me is bad. Wow. So working to restore that identity opened the door for me to realize that, in fact, it was actually the opposite. Mm-hmm. That the African people were really good and decent people. They were super smart. They invented a lot of the things that we use today, like mathematics, all the sciences, medicine, architecture, astronomy, metallurgy, a lot of the foundations of a lot of the technologies we use today, including the computer. Without the African mind, we would not have the binary code. We can program a computer because of a binary code. Wow. So learning about this gave me a sense of pride in who I was as an African woman. Also gave me a sense of hope, because I said, if this is what we were able to do for thousands of years, it's not because we had a difficult experience for a couple of 100 years that's going to break us. So that's how I started to reclaim my heritage and realize that heritage was enforcing me. But when I became a queen, I was actually living in the United States. Mm-hmm. And I had gone through a very difficult time in my life where I divorced after 21 years of marriage. Wow. And it was really a catastrophe. Like, it was really hard emotionally.
I can
imagine. Also, my whole life just collapsed. But I was working as a psychologist at the time.
Oh, wow. Yes. A psychologist.
Yes.
That's great.
So because and specializing in trauma, because what the experience we went through was quite traumatic.
Yes.
And so I worked as a psychologist. But then I was having a recurrent dream telling about an African woman in my dreams, coming to visit me in my dreams. And every time I had the dream, she was getting closer and closer. And I was like, this is weird. I keep having the same dream, like maybe once a month or twice a month. And I was like, what's this dream? And then one day she came and she was crying in my dream. She was really crying. And I was asking her in my dream, I said, why are you crying? And then she pointed something. And when I look at what she pointed, it was an African village. Like, the one that we see in National Geographic.
Oh my God.
So I said, and then I woke up and I was crying as I woke up. But then I said, why is this woman showing me an African village? The African village was burning and there was a lot of bad scenes. It was really like a nightmare because it was brutal. And so I couldn't figure it out. And then I said, you know what? It's weird. I actually never seen an African village in my life. I lived in Africa, but I never seen a village.
It was a big wake up.
So I called my father the next day, who is in Congo, and I said, Dad, the next time I come to Congo, I want to go to the village where you were born. My father was like, why? I said, Dad, I have this weird dream. And I realized I'd never seen the place of my origin. As I was working on my identity, I want to see where you were born. I want to see where my grandfather were. I want to see my people, the Luntu people.
Your roots.
My roots. I know everything about Belgium. I don't know anything about where I come from in the Congo. Wow. So my father was like, oh my gosh. So then a month before we went, he wrote a letter to me and my sisters. Yeah. And the letter, he explained why we have the names we have. My sister, her name Chilomba, the other one Kujudi, and I'm Diambi. And then he said, Diambi was my grandmother. So my father's writing.
Okay.
And she was Queen Diambi. Queen Diambi, the spouse of King Chiyoyo Mwata, my grandfather. And I was like, what? I was like, what's wrong with that?
How? He could have never told me this.
Yeah, but I thought he was maybe just not well. So I told my sister, I said, do you think what's wrong with Dad writing these things? Indeed, I spoke to my dad, and that was my history. And yes, he didn't tell us. Because see, the colonial period told us your history is irrelevant. Forget about it. It has no meaning. It has no value. So a lot of the Africans, after independence, they wanted to be more like Europeans. They wanted to speak like Europeans, dress like Europeans. They wanted to become westernized because they associate to be westernized to be civilized. And this is really what it means when they say, oh, civilization. They mean the Western civilization. So a lot of people across the globe, even here, when they want to be classy or chicy, like you say, they want to be more westernized. Yes. So my father was of that generation because they wanted to go to Europe to study. He went to Europe to study. This is where he met my mother. So telling us the stories of our people was irrelevant because he felt, what are we going to do with that? And I was shocked. Why I was shocked? Because I said, so I'm a princess. But imagine a woman who's already in her 40s, going through all her life as a little girl, never seen a princess that looked like me. In any cartoons, in any movies, no princess with dark skin, black, or with,
curly hair
or kinky hair. No princess ever looked like me. And for a little girl, I know it might be, wow. Yes, it means a lot for a little girl to recognize herself to the best she can look like, to how she can shine. Those are things that I just said to my dad. I said, now you tell me I'm a princess at 40-something years old. I wish
you didn't tell me that before.
Yes, exactly. That's what I say to him. I say, Dad, you could have told me before. But everything is okay. Maybe if they told me before, maybe I would have been a different personality.
Yes, you were not ready. Your Majesty, I used to say that things happen in the right time. Yes. And we don't need to rush. And you have all this experience, divorce, hard life, pains, traumas, as you said. And soon you had to pass through all that to discover who you are.
Absolutely.
And when you say the village, you have no idea the light in your eyes. Seriously, it shines. It was her eyes was like a fire here when your Majesty said about that you find out about the root, about the dream that you had, and this big wake up that called you to be who you are.
Yes. So
amazing.
This letter was actually something that I found out later. My father was preparing me for something that I didn't know. So I go back to Congo. I take one of my sisters come with me, and so we say we're gonna go to the village. I mean, when I say the village, people have the idea it's just like a couple of huts, but it's not really a village. It's every village is about 7,000 people, between 5,000 to 7,000. What we call a village.
Okay.
And
it's a lot of people.
It's a territory, so that has many villages, so over 200 villages, or sometimes 500 villages. So it's not a small, just like a village. When I say a village, it means, but that was my preconception.
Yes.
So anyway, we get I get to Congo, we prepare to go to the village. And one of the funny thing that I learned something is that my sister and I were like, oh my God, we're going to take mosquito spray, mosquito net, because we thought we were going to go in the jungle and he was going to be like, oh my God, because I'd never been.
Yes.
So, and my father's like, why are you taking all these things for mosquitoes? There's no mosquitoes in the village. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, it's the jungle. It's like, so. And that taught me something about nature. Like when nature is balanced, indeed, mosquitoes are not as vicious as in the city.
Okay.
So anyway, we get there and to Kananga, which is the capital city of Kasai, central Kasai, where my region is. And then we drive for hours and hours. And the roads are very bad and difficult. Okay. At the beginning, I'm a bit angry. But as I go through the road, I feel it's good that the roads are not good, because we get protection. So not so many people come to bring us bad things, to bring us pollution, to bring us plastic stuff, to bring us bad habits from the cities.
Yes.
So all this environment is protected. So sometimes, you have to find a good thing in a bad problem. So I get there and I think I drove into paradise. I realized when God created the earth, he and she put all the great love into packing this place with plants and trees and rivers and dirt that was red and it was just like I was driving into paradise. I was driving into heaven. I was like, this is so beautiful. And we were driving at night, and then when the daytime started, it was like almost like a painting, with the shadow of the trees and some huts.
I can visualize that.
It was just like, oh my God. I was like, this is where I come from. It's like I come from heaven. And I was like, why am I only discovering this now? And the people, every time we stop, they have very little, but they are so happy to see you, and they give you everything they have. So you don't have to know them. They see you, they're like, oh, welcome. They put chairs for you outside in the shade. They bring you water. They put food for you. You don't have to pay for anything. You're just a visitor, so they welcome you. And that's a hospitality, that warmth in Africa that I recognize myself having, and I know where it comes from. Because in Europe, it's not like that.
No.
In Europe, if I have to go see one of my uncles or my cousin, I have to make sure I call before I come, ask if it's okay. If I have to
put in their agenda.
Put in the agenda. And if I am there and they're eating, maybe they will say, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have enough for you. In Europe, it's different.
Yes, very different.
So anyway, when I get there, the way they welcome me is like really huge. And that's what my father was preparing me for. He's like, oh, when now you get here, everybody was like, oh my God, the princesses are here for the first time. And everybody's like, what? I was like, whoa, what's going on? Drumming, dancing, singing. It was just like colors all over the place. I'm like, oh, this is insane.
That's where love lives.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, but I wasn't expecting that. And I was like, this is how they welcome everyone. And my father was like, no, this is because you are from the lineage of the king. You are princesses. And I'm like, okay. So eventually the chief does the ritual for welcoming us and telling everybody, oh, the princess have come back home. This is the line of the king. He's back for the first time on the ground. And his very sacred moment. So we were very emotional. It was great. So I thought that was it. They were just going to do that.
Yeah.
But then the chief that holds the crown of our people say, Diambi, I have a question for you. And I look at my father, and my father said, and he said, Diambi, are you ready to take responsibility for your people? I don't know what got into me. I never even processed what it meant. And I said yes. Like a yes, like just jumped up my chest. And I was like, yes. And then the moment I said yes, they gave me like a live rooster. That's a symbol of leadership. And they put the crown on my head, the crown of our kingdom. And I was like, what just happened? Then I started to process and say, what? And everybody was like cheering, like, yeah. And I looked at my dad and I was like, I don't know what happened. So I said, I don't even know what I said yes to. So it didn't dawn on me that I was the queen. It didn't. I thought it was just maybe just a symbol of something. And then as I leave the place, I say to my sister, oh my God, what a day. Imagine we are officially princesses of the kingdom. And then somebody said, no, you're not the princess anymore.
Now you're the queen.
You're the queen. And I was like, queen? Queen of what? Like queen of the jungle? Queen of, I was looking at him, I was like, oh my God, am I going to stay here now? What does that mean? I had no idea of what it meant. And I had so many questions. And then the elders, they appeased me. They said, no, don't worry. And I was like, do I have to live here now in the jungle and leave my life in Florida? I'm a therapist, I'm a psychologist. And they were like, no, don't worry. And I said, but how do you do queen? And one of the elders said, you just follow your heart. So no, they didn't give me a book with rules. They didn't give me, they just say, follow your heart. So that's the day and how I became a queen, so the event. And then from then on, a lot of question mark. I cried a lot because I was very confused. I was depressed because I was like, I'm not rich. I don't have gold and coffers of diamonds that my kingdom have, so I can start building, rebuilding. All my gold and diamonds are in Europe, in the coffers of other kings that came to take it from us. Yeah. So how do I help my people? I'm a psychologist. How do I help an entire kingdom? Mm-hmm. So I was very confused at first. I was even depressed. And I even gave it back. I was like, I think they made a mistake. And my father was like, no, the elders are sure it's you. So I had to learn to live with it. And this is basically how I became a queen.
Oh my God, Your Majesty, what an amazing story. And do you know what's curious? As you say, you have, as I said, you had such a shine on your eyes. And for me that talk about love, you felt love.
Yes.
And you decided by your heart.
Yes.
And then you start to think about it. When Your Majesty starts to think about it, it's when the fear comes. And it's okay, because the fear is needed for you to make strategies and to decide things with your heart, but making the right thoughts and the right structures and decisions. And that's my next questions, because I made the search about your life, and I was so excited to come talk with Your Majesty. And then I thought, it has so much love that you have in the meaning of your work, union of people, and also the leadership that you represent for your nation and what you're doing around the world when you travel, when you bring this beautiful speech. And my first question was to know Your Majesty, because it's about getting connected with you, Your Majesty, better than just to know what you do.
Yes.
The know what you do is important for society, for politics, for cultures, but getting to know your heart, for me, it's make a lot of more meaning than anything else. So tell me about this love that now the past 8 years, you became a queen in 2016, is that right?
16, yes.
And so the last 8 years, what Your Majesty must learn about love, and how do you apply that when you travel for Congo and everything that you're responsible for?
Yes, absolutely. So in our tradition, I wear the crown because I come from the lineage.
Okay.
And before me, they asked my father. But my father was not interested because I explained my father was born during colonization.
Okay.
And a lot of the aspiration of those young men and women during colonization was to really become civilized. So civilized meant to be more like a Western person. So they required to cut themselves off from tradition, from our heritage. And they did it all throughout Africa. So it was either the French, the British, the Belgian, the Portuguese. So it was a way to control people, because the more you were anchored in your tradition, the more resistant you were. So our tradition, our history, our culture were like our resistance, a movement, like activists. So if they consider you an activist, you would you will have problems. Yeah. And they also had to convert you to Christianity by force. It was not like, oh, the message of Jesus, love and light. And no. They came a lot with violence and forced people. So if you were not
Too religious.
yeah, if you were not complying, you would really have problem and sometimes even get killed. So my father come from that trauma. So they thought the best way to survive is to adopt the Western ways, which they did. And it's the way they had to survive. So I'm very grateful to them for that. But I was born in I grew up in Kinshasa, and the love is where it comes from. Kinshasa is a very hustle and bustle city, very noisy, lots of music. But I grew up in a very modest neighborhood. I didn't grow up in a very rich, fancy neighborhood. I grew up in a modest place. And what's amazing about people when they don't have that much is they have each other.
That's everything.
And that's everything. They have each other. The neighbors know each other. We know each other's children. We eat in each other's house. We play in each other's home. It's a community because this is the wealth people have. They can rely on each other because sometimes we just don't have. But when you are in a community, you can ask someone. You're going to get the support from each other. When you go and look at the fancy neighborhood with all the people where they have money, when they have problems, they have money, but they are alone and they suffer alone. As opposed to in the community, modest community, people have grown to bond with each other and to support each other in a better way. So I grew up there, and I grew up literally in the streets of Kinshasa. I was never home. I was in school, home to change, and then in the streets playing with children all day long. Diving in rivers, climbing mango trees. I was just
I still want to go to this place, seriously.
I was just out there. I had such a joyful childhood. And I knew how people loved me and I loved them back. So when I left Africa for the first time to live in Europe, I find European to be really miserable people. Miserable and angry. I love my European family. I love my aunts, my uncle, my cousins. I love them. And they're not bad people at all. All the Europeans are not bad people, but they are so much sad and more angry and more fearful. And so as a young teenager, because I came from Africa to live in Europe as a teenager, there was no laughter. Everybody had their home. Sometimes you didn't even know your neighbor. You didn't even say hello. When you went to the store, people didn't say hello. And then I started to experience racism because people looked at me differently, and they would ask me stupid questions like, oh, when you're in Africa, how do you fly to Africa? I'm like, to a plane with the airport? And so I started realizing that there was such a lack of information about Africa in Europe.
Yes.
So, but then I learned not to make, mention of, think too much of it. But I became very depressed as a young woman in Europe because I felt people were just not nice and not welcoming and not so kind. But it was just because I didn't know them and I didn't know that culture that well. It's not because they were bad people. I understand. After a while, I started to know them.
You have the comparison now.
And know how to relate to them and know how to approach them and know they value the different values and so forth. But in that time of depression and hardship, I could always hear the drum from Congo in my heart, like doom, 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 doom. So that's always something that called me back to my center, to the love that I had for my country. I was missing Congo. I was missing my friends. I was missing the colorfulness of bright, full sun and colors of the women, the way they dress with the headscarf. I was just missing the food. I was missing the vibration, this really intense vibration on that land. And it's not to say that it's perfect. It's actually not. There's a lot of hardship going on in Africa. But a lot of the hardship is the consequence of our history. First, the capture and enslavement of our people, forced deportation of our people, millions upon millions for centuries, that are now the ancestors of the descendants of here.
Yeah.
Among those, some of my ancestors were deported. So I know I have my cousins here in Brazil and everywhere else in the diaspora.
Yes.
And then we have colonization. that starts with a genocide of 14 million people in Congo.
40 million.
Yeah. King Leopold II that took Congo as his private property were doing the rubber, exploitation of rubber and ivory.
Okay.
And during that time, they were so brutal that at least about 14 million people were massacred during that trade.
It's so sad.
I am a descendant of survivors of a genocide.
Wow.
And then after the independence were not real independence. They were superficial independence in name, but the Western powers still control everything and dictated who will be in power, who will organize our country, how our country is going to organize. And all they did is to focus our economy to be an extractive economy. So we could not do agriculture anymore to feed ourselves. We don't have industrialization to build everything we need for ourselves. We only have extractive economy. Extractive agriculture produce cacao, coffee to export, or minerals, gold, aluminum, iron, copper, diamonds, all of that to export. So the local people can no longer have their own independence and their own way of organizing themselves to provide for their proper needs.
Yeah.
And then also they sometimes support regimes that are political regimes that are not good for the people. And even if the presidents or some people, they have good intention at the beginning, but when they look at the constraints that are placed upon them by international organizations like the World Bank or International Monetary Fund or other organizations, the type of policies for development they have are so restrictive that the money coming in, even from that extractive economy, has to go back paying some loans at super high rates.
Wow.
So they cannot take the money to invest and build those countries. So the people are suffering immensely from that unfair system in which they didn't have to enter. Because if you look at it, all the contribution of African countries in the world economy, Africa should not have $1 of debt because we have not, we've paid everything we needed to pay in blood, in work, in resources that were taken out, extracted from Africa without ever paying a dime to Africa. So why is Africa has to be indebted so much that now the population is suffering? So I know I'm describing the people and the people's life in the sense that who they are. I'm not describing the condition in which they live, which is very difficult. But despite the difficult condition, their heart still shines bright. And this is something that really compels me to say that there is a trade between the feeling of love and happiness and the attitude of hoarding wealth.
Wow.
So when we focus our energy into hoarding wealth, material wealth,
yes,
there's a trade where you're depleting that love reservoir you have for yourself and for others. You cannot have both. Unless if you are hoarding, it's to redistribute, to help people.
Wow.
And this is what I feel. So the love I have is not just for Congolese people. It's love for humanity. Because in Congo, they didn't say, only love the Congolese people. Only love the Black people. Only love women. Only love... No. The love is for everyone who is in front of you. It doesn't matter. So yes, I'm queen in Congo. But I'm also grande mãe do povo bantu do Brasil. I became that because I love my people here.
Yeah.
I don't hold anything. I want to give them as much love as I can. I want to tell them how beautiful they are. I want them to know they are precious. I want everyone that I meet to see themselves as God see them. Because I'm thinking, every one of us is made. Life is so precious of a miracle that every single one of us, even the one that you see sleeping on the street, to make a human being, imagine how much love it takes from God, how much of God himself is invested in that being. Yeah. So when I come in encounter and meet that person, I don't care if you're president, I don't care if you sleep on the street or if you clean toilets. I'm thinking, wow, so God manifested itself into this person.
Yes.
So I'm in awe, in reverence. It doesn't matter who it is. I always see people like I was when I was a little kid. I want to say, how can we play? Because I loved playing when I was a child. So for me, interacting with people, hugging them, I want to dance with them. I want to kiss them. I want to love. I just want to love people, and I want them to love themselves.
Look, Your Majesty, I'm crying because it's so inspiring, and I understand what you're telling me, because your fight, my fight, it's not separation anymore. Love is the only thing that can change the world.
Absolutely.
It's so sad when we hear the story of so many people don't know about Congo, so many people don't know about Africa. What was stolen from all of you was dignity, but love cannot be stolen.
No.
And love is the only cure, is the cure of the system.
Absolutely.
And Your Majesty, you are making this. I know that, as you said, you went to depression. You were confused about your real identity for such a time, and but the meaning of your existence is to fight for love, because love has a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And when you say that you miss that, it's when you had the connection, when you went to the village, when you were close to your people, your roots, you could feel a love that in other nations, it's so miserable because they only have money.
Yeah.
Money is good because we have bills to pay, of course, but money, it doesn't have a comparison with love, because love is much higher wealth than money.
Yes, absolutely.
And your job, the meaning of your job is to change nations. Just the way you speak, just what you do, just the genuine heart that you put in that, it's for sure it's making a difference in the world. Tell me more.
For me, when we say love, people take that word very lightly, because we almost bastardized the word love. We think
but
love,
it's very hard work.
Yeah,
it's so profound.
We think love is like romance. We think love is just a sentiment. Love is like a fuel. Is an energy. It's a fuel that fuels your engine, and your engine is you, to do things that is to care.
Yeah.
The manifestation of love is respect, is care, is justice, it's truth, it's compassion. So love is the fuel to fuel the engine, so you can manifest all of this. So that when you have people in front of you, you are kind, you respect them. If they have a need that you can help with, assist with, you assist them. So I think that it's much more, it's very serious.
Yeah.
And I'm so sad to see a world where we resolve every single conflict with almost violence, because it saddened me. It doesn't matter if the people are in Congo, or they are in the Middle East, or they are in Europe, or they are in Asia, or in America. I feel like we are failing our human project.
Yes.
I think the human project is nature's project. We are made out of nature.
Yeah.
We are the children of nature. So nature makes us, but we have become so distant from nature and from the nature within us and outside of us that we are failing our human project, because we are failing to use our intelligence and use our wisdom to organize ourselves in a way where we assess the needs that we have all over the world. We assess our resources that are actually abundant all over the planet. And we organize ourselves in a way that we can meet everybody's basic needs. To have people sleeping on the street, not having food, not having access to medication, not having access to proper education, not having safety where they live. For me, this is the definition of insanity. So when you are in a world where you can send rockets into onto the moon and into the space, and you have all the sophistication in one hand, and then on the other hand, you have an amount that is enormous of people that don't even have clean water. Like, okay, I don't mind the moon. Okay, good. But how can we not put that kind of means into ensuring that on this planet, that is the one we have, and the only one so far that we know we can live on, we ensure to invest the means we need, not only in terms of finance, but in terms of education, in terms of decision-making processes, in the way we produce the goods that we need, to ensure that not only everyone has a basic need met, and that we protect the system, which is the planet, that is our home. So it just puzzled me to see a lot of leaders, a lot of people, not just leaders, but to pretend to be intelligent and to pretend to know what they are doing. And I'm including myself in it because I'm not judging anyone. And then to have this kind of result, to see so much misery, that unresolved problem. And the way we resolve problems, we bomb each other. So as violence, or the ability to inflict pain on people, the ability to inflict pain by sanctioning people, is now your power, is now the source that defines who is powerful and who is not. So those who don't have those bombs, those who don't have those weapons, those who don't have the ability to manipulate the so-called international organization to sanction this country or sanction this one or sanction this one, those are the weak ones. And power is there defined by violence, or the ability to inflict violence, rather than the ability to give love. I find those two paradigms to be completely different. And I think that we need to work on building a different paradigm.
Amazing.
Where we say, how do we empower ourselves? By the way we love, by the way we care for each other, by the way we provide for each other. This planet is abundant and she can provide more. But the way we share is what the problem is. Because if I eat 5 steaks a day, there is a family out there that could have at least 2 or 3 steaks, but that's not having them because I eat 5. And I understand sometimes, we don't want communism, I'm not talking about any of that.
No separation.
It's not about that. It's not about, and why can't we not reinvent another system, a better one? Why can't we not work on it? I'm an economist. There's brilliant economists out there. There's brilliant people all over the societies. How can we not come together to decide another way of doing things? Because obviously this is not working. After all the wars we've had already in past life, we're still fighting, still now. So this is what's compelling me to say, wait a minute, maybe if we knew each other a little better, maybe if we kiss each other more, maybe if we hug each other more, maybe we would care to be nicer with each other, because instead of being far from each other, the closest we are to each other, maybe we'll care more about each other.
Amazing.
And we won't see the differences of color, gender, religion, beliefs, philosophy. All that can come secondary. And I'm not saying that we have to all be the same, but all that could come secondary to the fact that we are human to human and we are the same family.
The hate to hate is not B2B, is not B2C, but it's hate to hate. Amazing, amazing. So inspiring. I could be talking with you, Majesty, the whole day, because love is what I believe. And I can see that's what you live. And for more leaderships like you around the world, that's what we need desperately. for your nation, for the world, for the work you do. Give us, I know that we are short of time, so I would like to thank you so much for being with us, talk about love, bring all this inspiration, and just leave your last phrase, your last comment for the public that got to know you better.
Well, I've been traveling through Brazil now for the past 3 weeks, and all I saw was love. So nobody can tell me that this is not who we are. In the core of who we are, it's that heart of us that we call in my land, mutima. Mutima is the heart.
Mutima.
But it's not just the heart, it's also the throne where God sits in us. And I find it all over Brazil. Everywhere I go, I find it in people's heart. I hug people, so I feel it and I see it. But it's not just Brazil. I've seen it all over the world. So I believe that the great majority of people are people that have God in their heart and they manifest it. Now, I know that there are people that don't have, but it's because they are sick. And those sick people that have a spiritual disease, I call it, spiritual illness, are the ones we need to pray for, are the ones we need to give more love to. Because they are sick, they want to contaminate the entire planet.
Wow.
Because they are sick and they think it's normal. So they think that their sickness is normal. Now they flip the paradigm to let's hate each other first. And if we have enough interest in common, we're going to learn to like each other. I say that's a disease. And that's a disease that has many symptoms: violence, injustice, racism, all of these kind of things, intolerance, bigotry, feeling of supremacy. Those are symptoms of a spiritual disease. So how do we cure that spiritual disease? I think it's through education and using still love through education, not to judge, but to understand. Just like a person is sick, mental sickness, physical sickness, there is also spiritual sickness, because if you're not spiritual sick, you hear that voice in your heart telling you to do the right thing, telling you to be kind, to be respectful, to help others. If you're not sick, this is what you hear. If you're sick, you cannot hear that voice. And so this is my dream, is that many people will heal from this sickness.
Let's take this love to the world, my darling. Sorry for to be so intimate, Your Majesty. No, but I call you my darling because it's true with my heart.
Thank you.
Gente, que papo maravilhoso. Muito obrigada. Thank you so much, man, for being with us. Gente, que Deus possa sentar no trono do seu coração, porque isso com certeza será a cura do mundo e por mais pessoas como a Rainha DIAMBI. Muito obrigada.
Obrigada também. Obrigada.